Welcome to the MoChill Zone with Mott's and Chili. Today they sit down with Mr. Grant Lyon, comedian and board game enthusiast.
Welcome to the MoChill Zone with your boy Mods.
And Chili.
And today we have a very, very special guest. And Chili, I'm going to let you introduce him.
Yeah, Mr. Grant Lyon. He's a headlining comedian with a really successful comedy album that he released last year. He released a special last year as well. And he's also a board game enthusiast and a longtime friend. Grant, it's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Appreciate you.
Definitely,
So first of all, I was about to ask you off air, but is that your actual backdrop?
These are real board games. This is not
Nice.
fake, this is not fake Zoom backdrop. So, boom, you can see it keeps going, keeps going.
Wow.
dope, man. I love it.
So there's like 700 board games in here. So
That's awesome.
yeah, when I say I'm a board game enthusiast, I mean it.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So you actually released your own board game too. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, I know.
Wonderful.
It's been a weird and wild process. I've been a comedian for a long time, and I liked board games and games in general just for a long time, but I never did anything with it like professionally. And it was actually the pandemic when all my tour dates got canceled and I wasn't doing any shows, and I was like, my creative brain can't rest. I can't sit still.
Yeah.
I'm not good at chilling.
Yep.
And so I just started making videos about like the board games I was playing, and it blew up way more than I thought it was going to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how did you get into comedy first of all? I know you played soccer in college, and then pretty much right after college you got involved, or was
I
it in
started
college?
doing comedy when I was in college. In fact, actually, it's kind of a fun story because my first shows were performing for my college soccer teammates. Like
Nice.
literally when we were on tour buses and traveling, I would get them together in hotel rooms. I'd stand up at the front of the tour bus, and yeah, and people were like, "Man, you should do this for real." And I was like, "Nah, I don't know. I'm just making my friends laugh."
Yeah.
And enough of them said it that I did start doing it. And so like, it started real slow for me. Like I think I started doing it for my teammates my sophomore year of college, and then the rest of that year, like, oh, my college had some like open mics or talent shows or things like that, and I kind of just started doing it, that sort of stuff, but never performing off of campus. And it was the next year, my junior year, that I was like, you know what? I actually want to like try to do this for real. And that's when I started to go around to like, different shows around the Bay Area and do open mics and that sort of stuff around there. Yeah.
That's great.
So, and then by the time I graduated college, I was like, I think this is what I'm going to try to do.
That's great. And
Yeah.
did you have a day gig after you graduated, or did you just go straight into
So
comedy full time?
I knew that comedy was like what I really wanted. You obviously don't pay the bills for a long time in
Sure.
any creative endeavor, and so I kept part-time jobs. I never had a full-time job because I wanted the flexibility of part-time stuff. So there were times I worked like full-time hours, but I always did it with multiple part-time jobs so I found a really good job for me, when I was like 23. I had one part-time job, and then my other part-time job was like doing insurance inspections.
Nice.
It
Okay.
was like it was a BS job. I didn't care, but like I didn't have to like basically they would put houses in my log, and then I would just go do them when I had time, and as long as I finished them within like 30 days,
You're
then
all good.
I was fine. So like I
Nice.
could take a week to go do comedy in Chicago and then still come back and then, get it
Perfect.
done when I was, so it like worked out really well. I hated the job, but it was all in service of, doing comedy.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. So when was it that you were actually able to quit your day job, so to say?
Yeah. So the real time was I moved to Los Angeles. I had like saved up a bunch of money and I moved down to LA, and I was like just gonna hit it hard, and and I became a professional comedian because there is this circuit for colleges for performing on college campuses,
Sure.
and you submit to these conferences, and then you go perform in front of all these college kids and from different campuses and stuff. And I had kind of gone through all my savings, and I had like maxed out a credit card, and I was like, well, that's it. I need to get like a job, like I don't have any more runway. And then kind of right around that same time, I got like one of the premier spots at one of those national college conventions. And then
Wow.
I became one of the most booked comedians for colleges that next year.
That's
So I ended
awesome.
up doing like performing at like 100 different colleges the next year. Uh,
Wow. So you're
uh,
on your like your last lifeline,
yep. It was
and
really like the 11th hour. I had sort of put all my eggs in one basket, and then it worked out right at the end. Know? And then that gave me the money to like, just live off of and to keep doing stuff. And it also, also helped with notoriety, right? Where then comedy clubs were like, "Oh, wow, where people were talking about me because I did all this other stuff, and then it led to something else, and it led to something else, and it led to something else, all that."
hmm
Like in
hmm
this day and age, there's not really like a big break anymore. Like just
hmm
there's so many outlets for media, right? We have such a fractured media landscape
Yeah.
that there isn't like the one thing. With comedy, there used to be this sort of uh, thing on like the Johnny Carson, the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, that if you went on and did stand up on the Tonight Show and then he invited you over to the couch, you were a
You
made man.
made it. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that was all it took. And now it's all just little stepping stones that lead to the next thing, that lead to another thing, that lead to building relationships. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Mots, do you want to get a question in here? I've been bogarting the
I
conversation.
know, also good. I've just been listening to you guys. What I want to know is who got you into comedy and who were some of your influences?
Yeah, the comedian that really got me in was Mitch Hedberg.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and so I came from a family that didn't really watch stand up or listen to stand like I honestly don't think I really knew that stand up was a thing until I got to college. And
Wow.
I'll tell you a story about that too, because when I got to college, my roommate, my freshman year, played Mitch Hedberg's first album
Oh, it's so
for
good.
me. Yeah, it's one of the best. And it was so funny. I was so much of a novice when it came to stand up. I didn't go, oh, this is great. Let me seek out more of it. I just listened to that album over and
That
over. Like I memorized that whole album. Like I was doing all the jokes to my friends. I was standing up at house parties and doing the jokes.
that's
And
great. I bet you're
yeah,
killing.
yeah, it was. I mean, and
So,
that's kind of one of the ways I started. Then people were like, "Oh, you should do your own stuff," and I was like, "Oh
right.
yeah, I guess I could." And then, I started thinking about my own stuff. But even when I first started in comedy, for the first 6 months, it was like Mitch Hedberg's voice in my head when I was thinking of jokes,
Yeah,
not my
yeah.
own. Which is funny because if you watch me now, I'm absolutely nothing like
Nothing like it.
Hedberg.
Yeah.
um, but I loved it, and it's what got me in. And then I will
So,
say, I, when I think back on it, and I think about how much I like didn't know about stand up, I remember I wasn't allowed to watch that much television, but my mom would fall asleep early, and I would stay up and watch Saturday Night Live.
Nice.
And so I
nice.
started doing that when I was like 13 years old, something like that. And I remember I kind of started watching, like the years I started watching were like the Will Ferrell, Chris Kattan, Sherry O'Terry, that sort of class. And I
Right.
remember one of my, like an early episode that I saw was Chris Rock coming back to host Saturday
Mm.
Night Live. And I remember loving his opening monologue and being like, this is so much funnier than monologues usually are. But it didn't click. I wasn't like, oh, he's doing stand-up. I just remember being like, I like this more
Okay.
than anything else on the show, and this is so funny. And I remember memorizing some of those jokes
Oh
and
yeah.
telling them to my
Right.
friends. And it wasn't until later I look back and I was like, oh, it's because he was doing stand-up. Like that's why I
That's
liked
funny.
it so much. I didn't even realize it at the time. I was like, he's just standing there and it's so funny and it's way better than these other dumb opening sketches they're
Yeah, yeah,
doing.
yeah.
Can
Awesome.
you
Yeah.
can, can you tell them about your process of like you writing and like maybe the very first time you actually went out there, how that was from the first time until now, and like and how you come up with your process of writing?
Sure,
Because
sure.
everybody has a different process.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like a multi-step process. Like I keep notes in my phone, so anytime I have an idea, it's like you just put them in your phone. And there's a lot of those that'll never make it out of the phone, right? Like there's a lot that just kind of stick in the phone, and every once in a while I'll look through it and I'll go, okay, let me try to write more on this.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times, what I do is I I'll look through my phone and I'll go, oh yeah, this is a fun topic, and I'll sit and I'll write out that. I'll work on that bit. But I don't try to memorize it. I try to like write it out and get it onto the page, but I don't want to like memorize it word for word
Mm,
because I want to go on to stage then and sort of see how it comes out naturally.
right.
Um, and I'll admit, like, I try to give every joke two or three chances on stage. That doesn't always happen, but if you go up on the stage and you kind of like do it, but not fully how you memorized it, and it does well, or at least it does okay, then it's like, all right, let me go back and rewrite. Now let me like actually think about this more because it worked on stage, so now I gotta make it better and sort of figure out how the joke works. And so a lot of it is in that rewriting process of, all right, there's something here, let me like work on it more. There are times where you go up and you try a joke on stage and it bombs and it'll never see the stage again. And also times where you go up and I'm like, no, I think there's something funny here, and I'll try it 10 times and it'll bomb every time, and then finally I'll give up on it. But
Mhm.
even those sort of things, when you give up on something, if you really like it, you're not really giving up on it forever. I've
Mhm.
had jokes or ideas that I have been like, I pulled from 5, 10 years ago and been like, oh, maybe this is a new way into that idea, right? Like I didn't
Yeah,
have a way because I'm like, I know the joke is funny, but sometimes it's the way you get into it and the way you approach it and how you make it relatable to other people and um,
yeah.
and just find like a like for instance, I have a joke right now that's doing very well, which didn't do that well the first time I tried it like 6, 7 years ago, and now it's doing well, really well. And I think it's about me being older now. I think now
Mm,
that I'm like a little bit older, it's more relatable for my experience and for people looking at me and stuff.
yeah, yeah. You just
So
weren't ready for it.
yeah, you know,
And it could be also related to like when you do music, where you your delivery sometimes how you deliver it. Sometimes
sure.
a big portion of that. It's not like what they say. Not what you say is how you say it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much of that in comedy.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
hmm So, you talked a little bit about your family. I really love your bits when you talk about your dad
Yeah,
and
yeah.
your mom
It's
too,
easy to
especially.
talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny man.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, how did they influence? Yeah, I know you said you didn't watch too much stand-up comedy growing up, but they certainly made a funny dude. Uh,
Sure, sure.
how did they influence you?
Well, I mean, some of them influencing me is just being supportive, right? Like I'm lucky that you've heard a lot of stories where parents are super mad at their kids for trying to do comedy or disowning them. My parents were both like pretty supportive. I will say when I first started, my mom was like, "Yes, you should do this," and then eventually go back to law school. Like
Yeah,
there
yeah,
was a little bit of that, not in like a mean way, but just in a I worry about you and how is this going
sure.
to work. but they come to shows all the time. Um, they've just been supportive. And then I don't know that they really influenced a lot of me like wanting to be a comedian or anything like that, but they certainly are interesting people, and they are a big source of material sure for
That's great.
sure for me. And thankfully they've been fairly understanding about when I joke about them. They don't always love everything,
Yeah,
but overall they've been pretty supportive.
that's great.
My dad always likes to point because right, a lot of comedy is it's like the truth, but an embellishment of the truth.
Right,
Sure.
right,
And
right.
so, like, I have a joke on my new special where I talk about how my dad never says I love you. He always says lots of love to you.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and the reality is my dad does say I love you sometimes, but he more often says lots of love to you,
Lots of love to you. Yeah,
you know? So it's like I say, oh, he's never said it because I'm trying to like, make this contrast. And
yeah.
the truth is he really does say lots of love to you a lot of times. And so
He
when
has
he
to
watched
use the
the
passive
special,
voice.
yeah, that was like that's when he watched the special, that was the first thing he said. He was like, well, I say I love you sometimes. And I was like, well,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you do.
You're like I could. That doesn't work as a bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. That's
you
funny.
gotta you gotta make it sound more extreme, you know
I don't like the distinction between like clean and dirty comics, but I will
Sure.
say that your material, it doesn't appeal to the lowest common denominator, and it's smart. Can you talk a little bit about was that a conscious decision, or was that just you being you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a mix of both. I can actually tell you a specific moment when I really had that thought. Was I was doing this bad casino show in Oregon, and I'm probably 24. And I think when you get to be a good comedian, there's a switch in your brain when when you first start out doing comedy. A lot of people go, what's the audience going to find funny, right? That's the perspective you're coming from.
Hmm.
And then finding your voice is ceasing to go, what's the audience going to find funny, and starting to go, what do I find funny, and how am I going to make that funny to the audience?
Nice.
And like a lot of new comedians, when I first started, I was writing just a lot of what do I think the audience will find funny? And it was a lot of, I don't know, hokey dating stuff and things like that. And then I started writing some more things that I believed, and I leaned into my love of history a little bit more, and I
Hmm.
and I and I leaned into some social commentary and things that I was thinking about. And I was doing two shows at this casino, and I bombed. I
Wow.
did the joke that I did the jokes that I believed in the first show, and I ate it so hard. Like 30 minutes, maybe three laughs in 30 minutes, sort of thing.
Oh no.
Uh,
Right,
Oh
right.
god.
and I went into the green room and I cried.
Oh.
Uh, and I remember thinking, like, I've got a second show to do. This is a moment where I need to decide who I want to be as a comedian. Because I could either go up on the second show and do the jokes that I believe in and risk bombing again, or I could do the jokes that I don't really care about just to like please this audience.
Hmm.
And I thought long and hard in that green room. I remember doing like a little soul searching in that green room, and then I was like, no, I think doing the jokes that I believe in will get me further in the longer run, and that's what I want to do as an artist and a creative person. And so I went back on the second show and I did the sort of jokes I believed in, and I bombed super hard and had a
Oh,
great time. Like I
nice.
was that second show, I remember bombing and just being so proud of myself. You know?
It's like I can't get any lower.
Yep. And just being like,
And I'm
yep,
being
I don't
myself.
care if you hate me. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. And so, that was like an acute moment where I was thinking about, okay, I think this is what I want to be as a comedian and who I want to be as a comedian. And there was still, a long process ahead of me of figuring out my voice and figuring out what I wanted to do and say. But in thinking about the smart comedy or whatever, I think the best comedy is comedy that punches up, not punches down. Like I get
Mhm.
really bothered when there's a lot of comedians that have jokes about homeless people or things that happen with a homeless person, and it's like, man, that person already has it tough enough.
Yeah,
They don't need you coming on stage and being a dumbass.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so for me, I just was like, I'd rather like the comedy that I love is like talking truth to power and like
yeah,
tearing down the higher ups, not punching down to the people that have no power.
for sure, for sure. No,
You
that's
know,
cool.
Um, have you thought about doing movies?
I have done some
Yeah,
movies. I've
he's
been
done some
in a
movies.
few. Yeah. I was in a film called Killer Kate, with some people you might recognize, probably don't know by name, but it is on Amazon Prime now. It had like
Yeah.
a
Okay.
limited, it's on like Rotten Tomatoes. It's got like 65%. It's like certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, you
Dope.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
what's up, man?
Yeah, yeah. I did another movie with a lot of like very famous people, like the dad from that '70s show and Jamie Kennedy and
Okay, nice.
that was like a big movie I did and we never finished filming it. The whole production like we shot like two-thirds of it and the production fell apart and
Um,
everybody sued each other and stuff like that. So
Do you plan on doing any more projects? You got projects coming up, possibly?
I mean, I'm happy to be in stuff. I've been riding this board game train a little bit
yeah,
Okay.
more these past few years than I was before, and so it's definitely that's taking up some of my time. So I'm not doing as many like auditions as I used to, but I also like the creative control of like doing my own thing.
sure.
So I'm certainly open to it, but I don't have any like specific plans right now.
And you were on a pretty national commercial as well, weren't you?
I've done like 10 national
Yeah.
commercials.
What was the
Yeah.
last one? I forget what it.
The
Forget when
last one I
the.
did was aired in the Super Bowl like
Yes, that's what I was
2 years
thinking of.
ago. It
Oh,
was
that's
with it
dope.
was with Tom Brady. Uh,
That's
Right.
dope,
yeah.
man. Dope.
It was with FTX, which now is bankrupt and took a lot of people's money, so it doesn't hold up as well. But
Oh man. Well, hey, you took their
yeah,
money, so
yeah, that's true. Hey, that's a good way to think about
it's
it.
that's Robin Hood type of thing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm wondering about when when you decide to roll out your A material and when you decide to kind of workshop something. Like what's the appropriate time to do both?
Well, I think you can do so. What I like to do now the most is when I'm doing a longer set, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it may be, it's like you start strong and you end strong and you put new stuff in the middle, right? Like if you start well and you end well, nobody remembers the stuff that's in the middle. And so you have time to play with in the middle of a set to try out new jokes and see what works and see what doesn't work and you have to do that. I mean, you don't grow as a comedian or an artist if you're not like pushing yourself and trying new
Yeah,
things. And so yeah, I mean, I do a lot of that where uh I you know, you want to start strong because you need them to know that you're like good at this and to trust you. And
yeah,
then you want to end strong so that people aren't walking out of the show being like, "Boy, that was rough."
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, and so I mean, there are smaller shows I'll do around the country. If I'm in town for something else, you can jump on a show and work on some new material and stuff like
Yeah.
that as well. But mostly it's sandwiching in longer
Or
sets.
like Wednesday night at La Brea Improv or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, for
Like a
sure.
little 15-minute spot or something.
Yep. Yeah, you can oftentimes do some new stuff at things like that.
So I
Well,
heard a pretty famous comedian once came on, and you were headlining a show, and he asked to run some material in front of you. I think he was just on SNL recently.
Oh, Chappelle? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So I actually produced a popular show in Los Angeles, and Chappelle came and did it a bunch. I think we had him
wow.
nice.
we had him like 5 different times or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
How was that?
It was fun. I mean, he was, he's like a very chill, nice guy. You don't get to know him that well, but
Yeah,
he's pleasant, and it's fun to watch. I mean, that's him just sort of workshopping stuff and figuring stuff out. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so it's fun to watch that process too.
I bet. We saw him with Rock on this last tour, and it was great.
Nice. Yeah, awesome.
what I want to know, do you have different sets or jokes you do like for different parts of the area or different parts of
Sure.
and
Like,
how do you do that process of doing it?
I mean, some of it is deciding what type of a show it is, right? Like if I'm doing a benefit for a bunch of families, like I'm gonna pick different material than if I'm doing a comedy club. So some of it is thinking about the audience, and some of it honestly is thinking about like the area that we're in. If I'm doing a show uh in the South, I might pick because I
Hello?
do some like I don't do a ton of politics, but I
Are we
definitely
having technical difficulties? Did
oh,
we lose you there?
did you?
Uh, uh,
No, I
I didn't hear that last part, but that's okay.
he was saying he doesn't do a ton of the politics, but
Okay.
Yeah, I
he
mean,
moves in the South.
I do a lot more like social commentary than I do politics, which, sort of has politics wrapped into it, I
Yeah,
suppose, but I'm not like I don't really do jokes about like Trump or Biden or that sort of stuff. I don't get
yeah,
specific about it. Uh, but there are times where it's like if I'm doing a show in the South and I have like material about like how I believe in a woman's right to choose, like there are times I will do that and be like, screw it, I'm gonna go forward with this. And then times I'm like, this is not gonna serve any purpose, like tonight.
yeah. You're just not
So
getting the vibes.
yeah, so you definitely think about it.
That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
I just kind of wondered, like like I know because comedians do things, and you guys are like you have a set that you do, but also like doing the different cities. I would think that you would have to change a little bit because like you probably couldn't do the same thing in every city. I'm sure it would change a little bit. I would think.
sure. And
Yeah.
it changes a little bit. Like when you are a known commodity, like Chappelle can do whatever he wants wherever he wants because
Yeah.
people know what they're getting into, right? They are coming to see him. It doesn't really matter what he talks about. They're coming to see
Hmm.
him. Whereas somebody like me, a lot of people are at a show, they don't know who I am. They don't I mean that's the dream for any comedian is to
Mhm.
like cultivate an audience that's there because of you.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
then you don't have to do all this introduction. You can just get into what you want to get into.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Nice. I want to maybe take some time to talk about curmudgeon just a bit.
Oh, sure, sure. Uh,
Uh, you want to explain the concept? I'm somewhat familiar, but
yeah,
I,
that was my first game, and then I also have a second game that just came out.
okay. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. Please plug that as well.
Curmudgeon is a game of silly insults. You are kind of like mad-libbing roast jokes. It's dumb and funny, but I don't
What?
think it's that easy to get anymore. I think it's mostly out of print.
Oh no.
Whereas this one right here, I'm kind of a big deal. This is my new one. It
Nice.
just came out in November, so this one is very much available.
Nice.
This one's like it's a game all about like exaggeration.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's about like you are describing your ability to do something or your knowledge of something, but you're doing it based on a hidden exaggeration token. So, how good are you at doing karate? Well, I just got a +2 and I got to make it seem like I'm a lot better at karate than I actually am.
Okay, okay.
So, yeah.
That's cool though, man. Uh,
Yeah.
I like all the games. Like how many games have you actually made?
Two. I've got two that are published.
Hmm.
Well, so that the question is different. How many have you made versus how many are published?
Okay,
I've
yeah.
I've got two that are published, but I've got another like 8 or 9 that I've created that I'm like pitching to people and trying to get out there.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
yeah. I love that the games. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna play that one. I can get that, and I can get that on your online, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of a big deal is available now for
Yeah,
sure.
I definitely like that. And the insult, I like that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I
Pretty cool,
appreciate it.
man.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
do you have any new projects you're coming up with that you can tell us about? Anything that's in the works?
Well, my dry bar comedy special, my special it's called Silly Mustache Man.
Okay.
Just got put on YouTube about a month ago. So that's out right now. So if anybody wants to see more from me, just search Silly Mustache Man on YouTube. I've got yeah, I mean I've got another game that should be coming out maybe in like the summer. Uh
Okay.
and so I can't really say that much about it yet, but
I, I know. It takes you can only say probably say so much, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stuff's released.
Yeah. Dope, man.
But like if people are interested in board games, they can find me on like Instagram or TikTok or stuff. I make like videos all the time about like silly fun board games.
Oh, that's great. You want to tell the people how they can reach you? That's all
Yeah,
we always like to make sure you drop a plug every time, as many times you can possibly do it in the show.
sure, sure. Yeah, well, if people are interested in like comedy stuff, they can go to grantlyon.com, which is Lyon, and if they're interested in like board game stuff, my board game name is Grant's Game Recs, like recommendations, RECS.
That's
So
dope.
if you search for Grant's Game Recs on Instagram or I mean even just throw it into YouTube, you'll find stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
I'm
yeah.
back. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties.
No worries. Uh, so yeah, we were just plugging some stuff.
Nice. Please continue.
Yeah.
We did that. Well, and then we'll go ahead. I know you want to ask me another question before before I was answering my question, Michael.
Oh no, I was just wondering if you got some dates coming up that you want to share.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, the easiest thing is always just to go to like my websites, either grantlyon.com or grantsgamerex.com. One's more focused on comedy, one's more focused on board games.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So pick your poison.
pick your
Yep,
poison. So,
exactly.
so have you ever tried to like maybe like do a like a half comedy, half board game show?
I
Uh,
do.
yeah,
I wrote a
that's
whole hour of stand-up all about board games, and I do it at board game conventions all over the country.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
that'd be
yeah,
dope right there.
yeah. So it's a whole comedy show all based on like gaming culture and what it means to like and I've worked hard to make this show both, funny to gamers, but also still make sense enough to non-gamers.
Yeah,
So it's a funny show to anybody, and I do it all over. And in fact, asking about tour dates, I've been doing that show for the last couple years at like board game conventions, but I want to do an actual national tour of that show and do it at board game cafes and board game places
dope.
around the country.
That would
Nice.
be dope.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, okay, you're doing all these things. Okay, what got you into the board games, and what was some of your favorite games when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is just, I think board games are a really great way to connect with people in real life. You get to a point in an age maybe where I was like, I don't want to just like go to bars all the time. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and board games were just like I found kind of board games at that same time where I was like, oh, this is great. Like I can hang out with my friends and drink a beer and have like an activity at the center of it. I love that. And yeah, so again, I kind of got into the world of modern board games around like 2015, but it
okay.
wasn't until 2020 that I started making videos about board games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
I was more like referring like when you were younger. It was
oh,
just
sure.
that when
Yeah,
you were
when
growing
I,
up. Like for me, it was Monopoly. I love Monopoly when I was
sure,
growing
sure. Yeah, when I was a kid, we played a lot of card games, a lot of Crazy Eights and Hearts and
up. Okay,
just kind of classic card games. And
absolutely.
when I was like 10 years old, I got into Magic the Gathering.
Okay,
Uh,
Oh yeah.
and I spent the next like 3, 4 years like doing Magic the Gathering a lot. And we had some family friends that gave me a bunch of his old cards, and then I saved up allowance and bought cards, and was playing. Got my friends got into it, and so that was kind of my first foray into like kind of nerdier games, I guess, was Magic the Gathering. And then I got into high school and got out of it and didn't really, I kind of was doing Magic from like the age of like 10 to 14 or something like that.
okay,
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
So I went to a Jewish elementary school, and some kid left their little Tupperware thing of magic cards,
yeah,
and in the somebody like some teacher thought it was a bomb, and like they called it the bomb squad.
that's so funny.
hey,
Yeah.
Uh,
so
uh,
besides the comedy and the board games, what do you like to do for fun? What are some of your hobbies?
uh, I mean, I play soccer still. I actually have a soccer game tonight. I gotta go play.
Nice.
So I do that like once a week.
Okay,
I
you get Michael out there with you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm only keeper these days.
Yeah. Uh, and I like to go on hikes. I like to um, go I like to go to breweries. I go to breweries and meet with friends there and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Are
So,
you an IPA guy?
No, I don't like the bitter beers.
Me too, right? Bitter beer face. Ah, bitter
Yeah.
beer face.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Tastes like children's tears.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, made on the passage between Great Britain and India.
Yeah, yeah, seriously.
Sailor's tears.
Yeah. Oh.
So how about like I could see you being perfect for like a sitcom. Have you ever tried to write something like that? I know
Yeah,
that
I
was
have.
always the trajectory. But back when you probably were starting, it was the talk show
Yeah.
to sitcom trajectory.
Sure. Yeah, I've written multiple pilots for shows and I've written multiple feature film scripts and I've had meetings with them about them and they've it's hard to sell a TV show.
I
So,
believe that. I believe
definitely,
yeah.
that.
So
definitely.
I keep writing.
Nice. I'm
Yeah.
sure one will hit. I mean, and these days you can just take it into your own hands, and
Sure, that's true.
we're trying to get into doing a little bit of film ourselves, and we met a guy last night who does a lot of independent stuff, so like we're pretty excited though, gonna start
Cool.
working with him.
Yeah, yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Um, what was I gonna ask?
Film, shows, projects coming up.
Yeah, I think we talked about those. I had something else, but no, I wanted to ask how your family's doing.
Oh, good. Everybody's good. I
Good.
mean, we're all very spread out now.
Yeah.
My sisters are in Massachusetts, my brother's in
Oh yeah.
Washington State, my mom's in Oregon. Like we're
Wow.
we're kind of all over the place now.
You get to see him on tour.
Yeah. And
Nice.
and I probably get to see them all more than anybody else because I travel for work.
Yeah, yeah, that's a blessing. How
Yeah.
about just like the rigors of touring? How is that?
It's a lot. I mean, it definitely you get worn down. I decided long ago that I was like even every two I there were times early on, partly just because I was poor, where I would stay out for like 2 months at a time.
Mm,
And I can't do that anymore. Like for me now, about 2 weeks is my max. And even if I'm just flying home for like 3 days and then going back out again, I need to do that. I
yeah,
need to just have a couple days at home. And so, I definitely, you become more particular when you travel. Like I know what I do in hotel rooms. I know how I go through airports. I have my routines and I'm probably the worst version of myself in airports because I'm like, You're messing it up. You're messing it up.
Aren't we all though? Aren't we
Yeah.
all? I don't think that's
That might be true.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. That was all I was gonna say.
So, well, go ahead. I want to know
No,
who are some of your favorites now? Either living or not living. Some of your favorites.
yeah, your Mount Rushmore
Yeah.
comedy.
You look it up too.
Sure. I love Dana Gould.
Mhm.
He's one of my all-time favorite comedians. He
Nice.
is dark but silly and irreverent at the same time. He was a writer for The Simpsons for a long time during some of their best years.
Okay.
And he's really great. Rory Scovel is one of my favorites. He is a he's like one of the most naturally funny people I've ever seen.
Okay.
Maria Bamford is somebody I love. She's weird and does these characters that I can't do, and her brain works in different ways than mine does, but I really
Nice.
enjoy it. Shang Wang right now is doing great, and I love watching Shang. Shang's a good buddy of mine, and he's just so funny. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
it's really hard to pick though. I mean, and if I'm talking like Mount Rushmore of all time, like Steve Martin is up there for me. Um, he's probably when I think of like a really famous comedian, the one that I like the most. Like because again, he was that sort of intellectually silly, which is
Yeah.
where I've tried to live as well.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So I don't think Mott's has asked this yet. Maybe he did when I was having my technical difficulties. But this was the question that I was so difficultly trying to get out. What would you say to somebody that wants to take up comedy or making a board game or really just any creative endeavor that requires a leap of faith?
Sure. The thing I would say is don't try to think about is this going to do well? What's the angle here? Just do something that excites you and make it good. Like
Nice.
there's no path to success in the entertainment business. If you had asked me 10 years ago that I would be doing all this board game stuff now, I would have said no way.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's no like right path. It's just about like following the things that excite you and then making those things as good as you can.
Nice.
Dope, man. I love that.
Yeah.
How about marketing? Because I know you've done some pretty extensive marketing in your career for
Yeah.
yourself, and I mean I know you've got a team now, but
It's
I'm
a
sure
grind, I mean, like in terms of like if I was to give one piece of advice about marketing, it would be consistency. Like all honestly, it's just all about consistency. You just have to keep putting stuff out. Again, in this day and age with like fractured media landscape, it's just about putting out content. So there are times where it can feel like a grind for sure because you're like, I just got to keep putting it out.
That's
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah.
That's dope.
That's awesome, man. Well, yeah, if you want to plug anything, I know we did some plugs, but if you want to remind folks where to find you,
I'm just, check out my websites, board game stuff, comedy stuff. Watch my new Dry Bar comedy special, Silly Mustache Man. It's a fun time.
Yeah.
And you
Silly
can
Mustache, man. It's on drybarcomedy.com.
Yeah, it just went on to YouTube last month, so it's on YouTube now in its entirety. And also, you can listen to me on like Spotify or any place that you get, music. My album's up there too. Scheduled Fun Time.
Scheduled Fun Time, and that did really well, didn't it?
Yeah, it hit #1 on the comedy charts.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love it, man.
yeah.
You are looking like a new young Sam Elliott these days. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I
a
know,
heck of
this
a
mustache.
stat, bro. I
It's
love
pretty
it.
wild.
I love it.
Yeah, the one time I see I'm on the show, I don't have my glasses on. Normally I keep my glasses on. I don't have them on today. So, but it's good though.
He's all squinty because of it.
Yeah, a little bit. My emotions started running the moment I saw you. My heart was jumping, I could not function 'cause of you.